Hello, I'm Heidi and I'm the illustrator of Amy Epps' new book, 20Solesby's Shop. Amy asked me to put together a little video to explain a bit more about the illustration process. So here we go. To start with, I read Amy's story many times. I then made some rough notes about where I thought I could take the illustrations. At this stage it's just really rough ideas. I then asked Amy if she had any special requests for the characters. She sent me some lovely pictures, some of family, which were a rough starting point for the drawings. I then begin to research. I use Pinterest quite a lot. I use Google Image. I use books and photographs. So for example, on Pinterest I make a board. I collect lots of images on there. Of things I might find inspirational or helpful when I'm thinking about how best to illustrate. So for 20Solesby's, I got lots of images of shoes and boots, as you'd imagine, and also ideas for some of the characters. For 20Solesby himself, various pictures of grandpas or old cobblers, things where I could take maybe the face shape of somebody and the hair of somebody else and mix them all together to get an idea for the illustration I'd like to create. I start to brainstorm ideas about my illustrations. Again, it's lots of notes. At this stage it's little scribbles and sketches, really rough ideas, not focusing on whether it looks nice and presentable, just getting the ideas out there. For the main characters like 20Solesby and Jack, I put together a spider diagram. Here I include all the characteristics I think the characters may have. This isn't something which is always visible in the final book, but it really helps me to get to know the characters. So for example, on 20Solesby's, I put things like he's always drinking cups of tea and he forgets where his glasses are, and he's got a bristly beard. So in the book, obviously you can tell he's got a bristly beard, but things like he loses his glasses aren't always visible. But it helps me to build an image, and it really helps when I'm painting him. Once I've got the ideas for the characters, I begin to draw them more detailed. So I experiment with face shapes and styles and play around with how I like the character to look. At this stage I usually use a pen and pencil or pens, and then when I'm happy with something I move on to the computer. I use a drawing tablet called a Wacom and a computer program called Photoshop, which helps me draw and paint digitally. It has lots of different brushes and techniques and works in a really similar way to pen and paper. It allows me to get things down quicker and you don't have to wait for the paint to dry, and it's nice to be able to edit it quite quickly. So if a customer might not be happy with the colour of a jumper or the hair colour, I can then go in and change this, and it's not half as much trouble as if it was in real paint. Once I'm happy with how a character looks, I draw from different angles. So I'll draw the face from straight on, I'll draw the back of the head, the side, because in the book I'll have to draw it from different angles. At this point I also try and experiment with expression. I then began to think about colour. For 20Solesby's, I chose to use lots of browns and more muted, neutral colours. I wanted to keep with the theme of the old-fashioned cobbler's shop, the wooden floors, the leather boots and the cabinets. It's nice to choose colours that work well together and carry them through the book so everything flows nicely. I then looked at how the story would fit in the book. A normal picture book is 32 pages and the actual illustrated story fits within 12 spreads within this. A spread is 2 pages facing each other. Other pages at the back and front of the book are for things like copyright and a dedication and title page. So once we know we have 12 spreads to work with, I start to plan out where the words will go. I and look at what will make an interesting illustration, what will fit nicely on the page, and go from there.
To plan out the book, I use something called a storyboard.
Storyboard is a collection of small sketches which are called thumbnails. It's a way of seeing the layout of the book all together, and it's nice because you can see it all on one page and see how the story will flow.
I then begin to paint the final illustrations. I use Photoshop and I start from a sketch and build up using lots of different layers to produce the final painting. I do this for each of the pages individually.
Once all the pages had been illustrated, I put them together in a different computer program called InDesign. This allows me to see everything together and allows me to add the story, the text, much more easily. I then add a title page and copyright information, and of course the front and back covers. Once the book was complete and all the amendments had gone back and forwards between myself and Amy, she sent a copy off to the printers to produce what's called a proof. This is a sample copy of the book so that we can check that everything's okay, whether there's any typos, we can check for differences in colour and layout, and just all the little details before the final order is placed. Thank you. I hope this video has been helpful in explaining a little bit about how a children's picture book is illustrated, and I hope it's given you some ideas about how you might do your own.